Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Touch MBA podcast. I am your host, Darren. So, a few weeks ago, we updated our school matcher with 2023 rankings. What exactly is our school matcher? Well, if you come to touchmba.com and you submit your profile, we want to help you find best fit business schools, and we want to help you make the best MBA investment. So one way we think is useful that might be able to help you is we allow you to select your most important criteria for picking business school, whether that's geography, it could be ranking, could be ROI, could be quality of alumni, etc. We allow you to pick your top 5 criteria, and then based on those criteria, we give you back a top 10 list of best fit business schools. So this school matcher with the algorithm behind it, obviously has taken us a while to create and to fine tune each year, and we've just updated it. And the reason I bring this up is because I think every single MBA candidate since the beginning of time. Obviously, that's an absolute statement and an exaggeration, but I think many MBA candidates, since I can remember, they always want to compare their short list of schools. And what's the easiest way to do this for most candidates? Let's put these schools into an Excel spreadsheet. And then I'm going to compare, the US News ranking and the Financial Times News ranking. I'm going to compare the course offering. I'm going to compare whatever dimensions of the program are most important to me. And somehow by seeing your short list of schools stacked against each other head to head, it kind of makes it easier for candidates to wrap their heads around the differences of each program and which ones stand out to them, which ones give them a better feel. At Touch MBA, we want to make this easier for you, so that's why we provide this free school matcher service in addition to our more personal feedback, where, for example, you select your target schools and we rank your competitiveness based on the profile you submit against that target school to just give you an early indicator of, what might be in the ballpark. All right. So all that is at touchmba.com. Now, why do I bring this up? Because while doing this, we do a lot of research. We look at a lot of other rankings. For example, Poets and Quants rankings, US News and World Report rankings, and in particular, the Financial Times MBA rankings. And I'll get into why I really like that ranking in a second. Before, we used to use the Economist ranking. We would look at the Forbes ranking. We would look at the Bloomberg Business Week ranking. Essentially, what we're trying to do by creating the school matcher service is, hey, if these ranking services have already done all the data collection, right, and have collected, for example, average alumni salaries 3 years after graduation, well, that saves us a lot of work, and we can just use that as one of our criteria, for example. So, of course, we want to go through all the different rankings, see what data they have collected, see what data would be useful for us and relevant to you as MBA applicants. And what's interesting is when we first put this on our website, we had 20 criteria, I believe. So we wanted to give you full selection, right? Whatever is most important to you. Could be start date of the program, could be size of the class, could be location of the business school. I mean, we went deep into detail, right? Over a number of years, we realized most applicants were picking similar criteria to weight rank best fit business schools. So we've shortened our list to 13, and you can find, when you come to touchmba.com, you can see what those 13 criteria are. Meanwhile, while doing this, I feel like more applicants should know about the sub-rankings, okay? Not just what is US News and World Report ranking, but using the data beneath that ranking. Because that's really the more important thing, right? And let's just state the obvious first, that each ranking, they each have their own methodology. And before blindly following these rankings, you need to see how they're put together. So let me just spout off some interesting facts. Did you know that US News and World Report this year increased the weight of placement success meaning employment and earnings, to 50% from 35% before, and reduced the weight of peer assessment from 25% to 12.5%. Furthermore, U.S. News places a huge amount of weight, 25%, on student selectivity as well, which is, GMAT scores, GPA, and acceptance rate. So their ranking has always really been biased towards reputation, right? And student selectivity, right? So in a way, I felt like their ranking, the strong get stronger, right? And the weak get weaker. Now, what about the Financial Times? Did you know that alumni responses contribute 56% of its weight? The ranking has 21 categories, and the most important alumni responses are average income 3 years after completion and salary increase from before the MBA to now, which are each weighted at 16%. So that's 32% of that Financial Times ranking is just based on salary and increase of income. So if those things are important to you, take a look at the Financial Times ranking, right? Value for money also has a pretty strong weight, being 5%. So my point is, know how these very prestigious rankings are constructed and make sure that the underlying weighting criteria match yours. Okay, most of the time they don't, because each of you is different. Each of you has different goals. And that's why I want to talk about what I'm going to dub these undercover sub rankings that I think more candidates should look at, right? Once you know what's most important to you, you can use those undercover sub rankings or sub rankings to create your own Excel spreadsheet and determine, which of these high-ranked schools really might fit you best and which to explore in further detail. I'm going to cover two things in this episode very quickly. One, some of the undercover sub-rankings that I think more of you should pay attention to. And number two, give you a process where you can quickly evaluate schools. All right, so let's start with the first part, my favorite sub-rankings. Yes, I am definitely biased towards the Financial Times. Why? Because I work with a lot of non-US business schools. I've had an international career, mostly in Asia. I worked at a Singapore business school. And I just think that the Financial Times does the best job of collecting information to compare business schools internationally. Right? Obviously, U.S. News and World Report is heavily biased towards the U.S. Not only does Financial Times collect this information from top business schools worldwide, but they allow you to easily compare and download the data. They do not put their data behind a paywall like U.S. News and World Report. So kudos to the Financial Times for providing this very valuable service for you and me, right, to help with school selection. I'm saying that because 4 of my 5 favorite sub-rankings are from the Financial Times. And my first favorite sub-ranking is new this year to the Financial Times. It is 4% of the ranking weight, and it's called the Alumni Network Rank. And this measures the effectiveness of the alumni network for career opportunities, starting companies, gaining new ideas, recruiting staff, and giving event information such as career-related talks as rated by alumni. Okay. Now, of course, every sub-ranking or category, it's not going to be a perfect reflection of that school's true alumni network, right? Because you're limited by the number of people who respond to the survey, what year of alumni are responding to the survey. There's always going to be a little bit of bias in these data collection efforts. Nevertheless, these ranking bodies, like the Financial Times, do their best to collect data and make some sort of universal comparison across business schools, which I give them props for, okay? So who ranks at the top of this new alumni network rank? Cornell, Florida Warrington, Stanford, Dartmouth, Notre Dame, Shanghai University of Finance and Economics, IMD in Switzerland, ESA Business School in Spain, Kellogg, Darden, and USC Marshall. Quite frankly, those are schools that are associated with strong alumni networks. I've always heard great things about Dartmouth Tuck's alumni network, USC Marshall, of course, the strength of their alumni network, and ESC as well. So those are some of the business schools who rank at the top. Who ranks at the bottom? Not a great place to be. Durham in the UK, Rotterdam, Pittsburgh Cats, Northeastern University, Smurfit in Ireland, UC Davis, and Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And I think what's most important to look at is kind of where your target schools fall in this spectrum. I mean, these are the best business schools in the world. So if they're at the top of that list, that's pretty incredible. That means alumni had a really great alumni experience. And I think this is such an important part of business school because you're going to be a part of this family for the rest of your life. And, the rest of your life is pretty long, right? Compared to your time in business school. So you're going to be drawing on this alumni network for hopefully decades to come after you graduate. That's why I think this ranking is really important and interesting to look at and to kind of see where your target school falls. If it falls in the middle of the ranking, that's all right. That's probably a good sign. If it's at the bottom of the alumni network rank, I think that is some sort of flag for you to look into and to ask alumni and current students about when you're doing your informational interviews, right? I mean, you can even say, like your program was ranked in the 90s, right, by the Financial Times for the Alumni Network rank. Do you think this is true, or how have you used the Alumni Network? What have been the difficulties of the Alumni Network of this program, etc., right? So again, this is just a way for a starting point for you to ask better questions to gauge fit. Okay, what's my second favorite sub-ranking? The average alumni salary 3 years after graduation of these programs, which I mentioned already, counts for 16% of the weight of the Financial Times ranking. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It's just looking at, how the market values in aggregate alumni from these programs. So unsurprisingly, Stanford alums 3 years out are averaging $250,000 US. They're number one. Harvard's right behind at $235,000. Columbia, $226,000. INSEAD is the highest ranked non-US MBA program. They're ninth at around $200,000. And then Bocconi is 14th internationally with $193,000 average alumni salary 3 years after graduation. This is just useful to know, to give you a rough idea of what your class would be earning, right? 3 years after graduation. And I think what's more interesting in this measure is to compare business schools within the same country, right? So for example, INSEAD, HEC Paris, EDHEC, M Lyon, and ESSEC are all top business schools in France. But INSEAD and HEC Paris are the two business schools that really command that market premium in terms of average salary. So INSEAD, again, I said, is about $200K, $198K, and HEC Paris is $172K, compared to M Lyon and ESSEC, which are at $117K and $110K, right? So it's just, again, the Financial Times has put in a lot of work, twisted the arms of many alumni to get this data. Why not take advantage of it and kind of see where your top-ranked business school falls in relation to its competitors? And again, obviously, it sets expectations for your planning as well, when you're planning out salary, income, future earned income, etc. All right, my third favorite measure from the Financial Times, again, is the effectiveness of career services. This carries a 3% weight in the ranking, and their definition is the effectiveness of the school careers service for career counseling, personal development, networking events, internship search, and recruitment as rated by alumni. I do think this helps. This ranking helps give you more data. It helps set expectations. It can help you ask the school, recent alumni, and students better questions. For example, in Canada, Queen's ranks quite high. Queen's is ranked number 25 internationally in terms of effectiveness of career services. Ivy Business School is at number 67, and unfortunately, University of Toronto Rotman and McGill both have great reputations in the business school world, are in their 90s for effectiveness of career services. Again, I think it is helpful to look at business schools in the same country. Similarly, ESA in Spain is ranked number 5 worldwide, whereas IE Business School is ranked number 94 in terms of effectiveness of career services. Obviously, wherever you go to business school, you're going to have to come in with a plan, and you're going to have to be an assassin. Maybe the wrong metaphor, but the point is you have to be really focused with who you're targeting, which firms you're targeting, who you're targeting with your outreach, and that sort of plan and grit is going to be what helps you, really take advantage of your business school platform to find your desired post-MBA career job, right? This ranking is interesting to me, and it's something that, I might use as a conversation starter as I try to determine school fit. Okay? My 4th favorite MBA sub-ranking is the Financial Times Research Rank, which carries a 10% weight in the Financial Times ranking. This is calculated according to the number of articles published by current full-time faculty members in 50 selected academic and practitioner journals between January 2020 and July 2022. This rank combines the absolute number of publications with the number weighted relative to the faculty size. So, U.S. schools really dominate this ranking. Harvard, Columbia, Cornell, and Booth are the top 4 ranked schools here. Only INSEAD and Toronto Rotman crack the top 20 for non-U.S. business schools in terms of research rank. Also, which is really interesting, is the Indian business schools are mostly at the bottom of this ranking. So Indian School of Business is the highest at number 61, but the IIMs, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, Indore, and Lucknow are ranked number 87 and in the 90s, right? In the bottom 10% here. So what I think is interesting about the research rank is it just shows you, it gives an indication of kind of the thought leadership that's happening behind the scenes. I mean, I know many applicants see business school as a way to progress in their career and to make more money and to gain more seniority. That's probably top of mind for most applicants, and deservedly so, given the cost, the extreme cost of MBA programs. I get it, right? But these are graduate schools, and professors are doing a lot of research to push the business profession forward. And so I think this rank does provide some insight into who is sort of at the forefront of that in the business school world. Now, this is a very general measure. How do they pick those 50 selected academic and practitioner journals? Maybe you don't even care, and you just care about, say, one subcategory, whether that's operations or marketing or general management, whatever it is, right? But I do like it as an overall indicator of research strength. If you're going to learn about business, why not do it from people who are publishing in the top journals and who are frequently published, right? Which brings me to my last favorite sub-ranking, and it's related, which is specialization rankings. So at Touch MBA, we offer you the choice to pick from, I believe, 10 different specializations. Like if it's important for you to go to a school that's very strong in entrepreneurship or very strong in operations or very strong in supply chain, we want to give you that option. And we use 2 sources for this. One is the U.S. News and World Report specializations ranking. The second, which I prefer, is the QS top ranked specializations. Now, why do I prefer this sub-ranking? The U.S. News top ranked specializations is largely based on how deans of these business schools view other business schools in terms of how strong they are in this specialization, right? So that's a lot of just reputation. Most of these deans are older, and I'm sure they know their stuff, but I'm just saying a lot of, I would think their bias might come from how, say Northwestern Kellogg has been viewed for decades in terms of being a market leader in research, right? And maybe they deserve that reputation. But what I like about the QS method is they combine 3 factors into this specializations ranking, right? One is career placement stats. How many people are actually going into marketing from business schools? Second, they look at employer reputation. So they survey thousands of employers every year, and they'll ask these employers, like, which schools are you recruiting from, right, for these functions? And thirdly, is that a word? And third, they include research strength, right? So the most prestigious marketing journals, where are they publishing from? It is also a global ranking, which I, as an international business person, appreciate. So we do use this QS top rank specializations behind the scenes in our school matcher. And there's some interesting findings here. And I'll link, by the way, to all these rankings and all the methodologies in the show notes of this episode. This will be episode number 207. Yeah, just click on the link in our show notes to access our write-up, and then you'll find all the links to these rankings and methodologies. So for the QS specializations ranking, you can look at entrepreneurship, consulting, finance, information management, marketing, operations, and technology. Again, it's a global ranking. And for example, it's interesting that Washington Foster was at least this year top 5 in the technology ranking. I bring up this school because, if you're really focused on technology, maybe your GMAT is subpar, and maybe it's going to be really hard for you to get into Stanford, which it is for 99% of applicants. Well, then maybe you should consider Washington Foster, which is less selective, but might serve your career aspirations just as well, or learning aspirations just as well. In terms of their entrepreneurship ranking, you knew that Stanford and HBS would probably be in the top 10, which they are, number 1 and number 2 for QS. But did you know Imperial and Cambridge and Oxford would also crack the top 10 at number 3, number 4, and number 7? That NUS Business School in Singapore would rank number 5, ESA number 6 in Spain, and ESADE number 8 in Spain, ahead of MIT and Wharton. These rankings aren't perfect. These publications like QS are trying their best to form some sort of comparable measure for the schools, but I still think the results are interesting and might give you a second or third school to look at. And I'm going to come back to this theme in a second. So those are my top 5 sub-rankings. Again, I'm just going to repeat them really quick. The Financial Times Alumni Network rank. Number 2, Financial Times average alumni salary 3 years after graduation. Number 3, Financial Times effectiveness of career services. Number 4, Financial Times research rank. And number 5, QS's top ranked specializations. Previously, we used to look at The Economist. They, of course, have stopped ranking MBA programs, but when they were ranking MBA programs, they had some interesting categories to compare. Bloomberg Business Week allows respondents to determine the most important factors each year, which is kind of an interesting approach. Makes that ranking kind of hard to compare year to year, but it is an interesting approach. Compensation, learning, networking, entrepreneurship, and diversity are their 5 categories. So you can compare U.S. business schools across those 5 categories. You could also compare international MBA programs across those 5 categories, which is interesting. I mentioned I want to give you a process to quickly evaluate schools, shortlist schools, determine your universe of schools you're applying to. The first way to do this, and it's self-promotional, is to go to Touch MBA. It's a free service we offer you. We just updated our school matcher algorithm, so we can give a sort of impartial best fit school list based on your top 5 must-have criteria. And we also give you personal tips on your competitiveness ranking and how you can improve your profile before you apply. And that's all for free. So that's one way you can do it. If you don't do that, I'd start with the Financial Times MBA ranking. Again, they do not hide their information behind a paywall. They allow you to pick your most important criteria. They allow you to download the entire list of 100 business schools. I mean, this is awesome. This is really, really awesome and can save you tons of time. Why not, instead of making your own Excel spreadsheet, pick the 3 to 5 things that are most interesting to you from the Financial Times MBA ranking, and download that spreadsheet and then start adding your own criteria, start weighting your own criteria. Just to give some examples, one applicant I know, his most important criteria was that these business schools have ins with McKinsey, Bain, and BCG in China. In other words, McKinsey, Bain, and BCG in China recruit from these business schools. That was his most important criteria to start with, right? And there's not a ranking for that, but there can be research done. The most important concept is to determine what's most important for you, to make that your first column, and to find the data, right? Triangulate the data for that. Weight those criteria. If number 1 and number 2 are the most meaningful, weight them heavily compared to criteria 3 or 4, right? And then you'll be surprised to see which schools rank at the top of the list. And here's my challenge to you. You are going to come in with a preconceived notion of which schools you want to apply to. In fact, this is something that has really made me question the value of what we do at Touch MBA. Even though we've been doing it for 10 years, maybe it's a bit late for me to come to this conclusion, but I was lucky to have a very devoted listener, Jasper, who is finishing up his MBA program at the McMaster DeGroote School of Business in Canada. Jasper and a number of his very smart classmates at DeGroote helped me do a market study on Canadian MBA applicants. And one of their findings was that, again, what I just mentioned, that a lot of MBA applicants already have an idea of where they want to apply to, yet they still struggle with picking the right school, right? So it's a very interesting situation where maybe there's not much room to change where you want to apply to by the time you're ready to apply, yet those same applicants still struggle to get the information they need to make the best MBA decision in terms of where to go. Nevertheless, this is what I want to say. You're going to either come to Touch MBA, or you go to the Financial Times ranking, or you create your own Excel spreadsheet to compare schools. And you're going to probably have this list of maybe 2 to 4 schools you're pretty excited about, right, to apply to. I would encourage you to expand that list of 2 to 4 schools to 4 to 6 schools. All right. And what are some ways you can do this? Maybe you're targeting the top ranked MBA programs in Canada. If geography is the most important thing to you, for sure, look at the top 2 ranked or top 3 ranked programs in Canada, but also consider the programs that are ranked number 4 or 5. If going to a school that is strong in entrepreneurship is most important to you, look at the QS specialization ranking for entrepreneurship. And yes, you've really wanted to apply to Stanford all these years. For sure, apply to Stanford. But, if you're willing to think internationally, well, why not take a look at Imperial MBA's entrepreneurship offering, or even Cambridge Judge in the UK? Widen your universe of schools. Please, guys, I really encourage you to do this, because what you're going to discover is maybe those programs that weren't on your radar really have something to offer you. Could be A. Could be B. They're less selective, yet just as pivotal for you in your career. And you might even be able to win some scholarship funding, right, at that university. Now, in the end, I want you guys to pick the family that you're most proud and excited to be a part of. At the end of the day, there's only one way to do that, and that's by talking to people at each of these schools. The admissions team, students, recent alumni, letting them know what your goals are, letting them know what you're trying to get out of the MBA, and getting the inside word on what's happening, right, at these business schools. During those talks, you'll get a better idea of which family you want to be a part of for the rest of your life. But at the beginning of that process, when you're shortlisting schools, think about at least 2 or 3 other programs. Maybe these sub-rankings will help you do that. And that is a big reason I'm recording this episode. All right, guys. So this went on a bit longer than I thought it would because of what we do here at Touch MBA. I'm probably more passionate about this than most other sort of MBA sites or resources that you know of. Anyhow, just want to make sure you guys are surveying the entire landscape of business schools so you can make the best MBA investment and so you can find the best family to be with for the rest of your lives. All right, guys, we'll see you next week on the Touch MBA podcast. Peace. Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Remember, you can get free school selection help and a profile review at touchmba.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Just search for Touch MBA.